Just before airtime, I spoke with Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois, a distinguished veteran of the Iraq War. Senator, what do you make of President Trump saying that Turkey's incursion into northern Syria, quote, has nothing to do with us, because if it weren't for his conversation with Erdogan, I mean, this would not be happening. He did essentially greenlight it by pulling special forces out of the area.
Look, Anderson, in the space of a little over 7 days, President Trump has diminished America's role as the leader of the free world by doing several things. One, he abandoned our Kurdish allies who have fought and died alongside our troops for the last several decades. He's emboldened the Russians who are now patrolling in the area that we used to have our special forces and patrol, and we used to patrol. He has now emboldened Assad, a murderous dictator. He has also gotten into a situation where a NATO ally, Turkey, has actually fired artillery on American forces. I don't think any of those things are an America first policy, and I don't think any of those things make America great again. So I have no idea where he's coming from, but he could not be more wrong about the situation.
It's also given a win to Iran, whose allies are backing the Assad regime. I mean, is it clear what the strategy is here from the White House, or even if there is a strategy? Because the Vice President and the Secretary of State, are making this trip over to Turkey supposedly to meet with Erdogan and push for some sort of ceasefire. And the president is, riffing during a photo op, undermining everything, saying, look, he doesn't really care about Turkey's invasion.
Well, it's very clear that there's no strategy involved whatsoever, and the president just did this on his own. And now he's sending Mr. Pompeo, who's our Secretary of State, but a guy with no actual success rate in international negotiations, and Vice President Pence, a man with no foreign policy experience, to go meet with Erdogan, a man who actually rolled our president over a phone call. There's no strategy here, Anderson.
Well, also, the president seems to paint the Kurds with a pretty broad brush. I mean, there are, terrorist threats, legitimate terrorist threats that Turkey has and concerns they have about the PKK. But the president is saying that, the Kurds are no angels, criticized their ability to fight without U.S. help, said we paid them a lot of money, said they didn't help us in World War II in Normandy, of all things. Do you think he doesn't? I mean, is he just trying to make excuses for a rash decision?
He's clueless, Anderson. He's clueless. Just ask any U.S. troops who served any time in Iraq, any time in the region. The Kurds have lost 11,000 fighters fighting and dying alongside American troops. There are any number of American troops whose lives have been saved by the Kurdish fighters who stood alongside us. And you know what? By abandoning the Kurdish allies, what we've told people in the region, don't work with Americans because we will abandon you. Who is going to work with U.S. forces now? Who's going to tell us the intelligence that we need to know? Because they know that working with Americans does not benefit you in the end. We're just going to abandon you to be slaughtered the way we abandoned the Kurds to be slaughtered by the Turks. What's
so sad about this is, when South Vietnam, when Saigon finally fell, there were a lot of people who had helped the United States who were not taken out, who were left behind and paid the price for that. When there's plenty of interpreters and people who have worked for U.S. forces in Afghanistan and Iraq who have not gotten the visas that were sort of dangled in front of them in order for their help. Those things now seem to pale in comparison to this betrayal of a force of fighters who have been on the front lines more so than U.S. forces. I mean, it's not like we've had tens of thousands of troops in these regions. The Kurds have done most of the actual fighting and dying, 10,000 or more.
Well, I mean, I would not expect this president to learn any lessons from Vietnam since he wasn't there. And also, obviously, was not a student or a scholar of the Vietnam conflict and the lessons learned from that. Bottom line, I'm looking moving forward. If I were a division commander right now or a commander of a U.S. Special Forces group, I would be looking at dusting off my plans for potentially being called to go back into the area to fix this mess that the president's gotten us into. Make it clear.
You think that might be necessary?
America in danger. Oh, I think it's very much, it's very likely to happen because the president has now put American personnel, both civilian and military, in danger. Not just in what's happened in Syria, because this whole area is all interconnected, and those ISIS fighters are headed towards Iraq, and we have forces in Iraq right now.
Are you pleased with what you're hearing from Republicans in Congress? There's a lot of them are not backing the president here. Lindsey Graham, I mean, he's sort of been a little bit all over the place. He was first upset with the president, then he seemed to cut him some slack, and now he seems upset again.
Right, but here's the deal, Anderson. There's one person, and one person alone, who can fix this, and that is Donald Trump. And he's the guy that made this decision. He's the guy that basically greenlighted Turkey to conduct this invasion. All this, the release of the ISIS fighters is Donald Trump's fault, and that's where it lies. Sure, we can pass sanctions all we want, but at the end of the day, it's Donald Trump who has to fix this, and he's the one who got us into this mess, and he's responsible for those hundreds and thousands of ISIS fighters being set free.
Senator Duckworth, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,